I'm Dr. Rob Rutledge. Welcome to the Healing in Cancer podcast. It's a real honor tonight to spend some time with Lorna Scott, who's a very wise person and has a great amount of expertise in many realms. And we're going to speak specifically around caregiving. And I want to thank you, Lorna, for taking some time out of your vacation, actually, to join us and share your wisdom with the wider audience. So welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. I just want to introduce you a little bit. So Lorna has quite an extensive history and a story that is really quite remarkable and inspiring at the same time. And through her experience, she became an expert in caregiving and actually wrote a very, very helpful book called The Caregiver's Lighthouse. So that's it. That's the name of your website. I'm sorry.
Yes.
And your organization, everything else that you offer in so many different realms. Book is Walking the Journey Together Alone, Finding Peace, Hope, and Joy in the Middle of Deep. And the last word starts with SH. And I think I really appreciate that authenticity of the title, is just to tell the truth and just share that perspective. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Lorna, I'm hoping, as we do in most podcasts, is just to what I call set the intention, which is to kind of come back to ourselves and remember our greatest values. And for those who are listening, just to spend the 2 or 3 minutes that we would spend together contemplating, coming to that kind of sense of heartfulness. And so as people can join us in whatever way is best for them, I typically sit up a little straighter and assume more of a meditation posture myself. And I actually have some chimes today, so we'll get the official chimes chimed in. And that's just a reminder to come back to the here and now, to connect with a sense of physicality and being connected with our bodies and our feet on the floor, the weight of the body in the chair. And that sense of breath. Just for now, just become very curious. Use your curious mind. What does it feel like to breathe in this moment? Just maybe even have some gratitude for our own breath, the fact that we're here and can listen to the podcast and to connect and to learn from Lorna's teachings. So we bring our senses into the here and now bring that sense of heartfulness. And we're talking about caregiving, so think about the people in your life, the people that you love very much. And perhaps you're helping somebody who's in a difficult situation. Just bring that sense of heartfulness, that sense of caring, that sense of love into your heart. Maybe you can imagine a person who's suffering most in your life, out of all your friends and family member, somebody who's really suffering. And from that deep sense of peace and compassion and love, just imagine that you could send them a prayer, an aspiration for healing in whatever way is best for them. Send your love to them. Imagine that they receive that with a smile, that your love is touching their heart. And extend that sense of compassion and peace and kindness out to your friends and family. And expand that again beyond to your community, to the people that are affected by cancer and other illnesses. Just allow your heart to expand that limitless space, to expand to everybody everywhere who's suffering. And from that deep, deep place of compassion, that warmth that envelops your body, send that same loving kindness towards yourself. Maybe towards a physical ailment or a psychological issue. Allow yourself to accept that kind of sense of love and kindness towards yourself. Maybe as a last symbol, you can put both hands just in the middle of the chest and imagine that you're giving yourself just a bit of a kind of a hug. I love and accept myself as I am right now. And release the sense of kind of compassion, visualization. Come back into the body, that sense of breath, that sense of connection with the earth, that sense of openness to learning from Lorna and really being able to extend her wisdom into the world in a way that's best for you and yours. Thank you. I guess I'm settled down now, so thanks, Lorna, for putting up with all that.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's beautiful. Very beautiful.
thank you. And I just want to reflect that you've joined us from vacation, and I love the symbol of that. I love the symbol that you're taking care of yourself and nourishing yourself and doing what's good for you, because that makes you a better person, allow you to give to other people. So I just love the symbol that we're talking about caregiving and that you're taking care of yourself at the same time.
Yes, that was a big lesson along the way as well.
Yeah. Can you start us from the start? What was your life like before your husband got a cancer diagnosis?
Well, we were in our mid 40s and had really just started kind of living our life as adults. Our children were already grown and left home, and my husband had just started a brand new job. We were really at the pinnacle of what we thought we were going to have for our life. We were young parents, so we had lots of challenges when we were first married, and fought hard in lots of different ways to get where we did. And we're looking forward to our life as it was supposed to be. And September 30th, 2005, he walked through the door and told me he had cancer. And it was a shock. It really just kind of straight down at the knees. Everything that we had hoped and dreamed for just seemed to be elusive.
Yeah, really shatters one's expectations, really, and just pieces can fall apart in so many different ways at that point.
Yes, and we just, as I mentioned, we had just moved. So we moved to a new community. We had both just started new jobs. We were in the middle of building a house, and then cancer treatment came. We lived an hour and a half away from the treatment center, and he had to have radiation right away. So staying in Calgary for 5 days a week while I was, I did try to work, and that was difficult, and I had some challenges in getting some time off, which was another, I guess it was a little bit of a thorn in my side, but also gave me some more passion for supporting caregivers. At that time of their life, it's not anything that they need to worry about when they need to be supporting their loved one.
Agreed. What was, when your husband was diagnosed with colorectal cancer, I imagine he went through a major surgery, went through several weeks of radiation. What was most difficult for you during that time as the wife of somebody with a cancer diagnosis?
At the very beginning of when he was first diagnosed, what was the most difficult part was actually the time away from work, because there was a lot of pressure, and I just started the new job, and they weren't very friendly in that way. So balancing that work with being an hour and a half away from home, and all the things that were going on with the house. And then as the time went on during the 5 weeks, he had 5 weeks of pre-surgery radiation and chemo. That, watching him get sick, he had horrible mouth sores. That was, anytime he had treatment, that was one of the worst things for us to deal with, was the mouth sores and the toll that would take on him, because he couldn't talk, and trying to find things to feed him and keep his strength up. And we looked at things as a chunk of time. So that was like 5 weeks of the radiation. It leaned on towards 6 weeks. And so that was one chunk of time, the healing time, and then the surgery. And we certainly had a hope that he would have a surgery that he would not have that he
Colostomy
would.
or bank?
Yeah, sorry. I just went, I'm
Yeah.
thinking colonoscopy because now I'm in my mid 50s thinking that I need to make sure that that always happens for me and that my kids, I just went blank there. Yeah, that, so yes, and I mean, that wasn't, the doctors didn't hold out, give us any false hope. They said, at best, that's the best you can hope for. Most likely he would have a colostomy. So, that, while disappointing, he just managed that. He was such a trooper. For me as a caregiver during that time, actually, it was relationships with family and friends that were some of the most difficult things because they wanted to help, but they didn't know how to help. I didn't know how to ask them. And sometimes it was just very frustrating, and it was a tenuous time anyway. So learning how to ask for help and getting the help that we needed most was really important.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much there to unpack, but I do want to give you the kind of the fuller story around that. So initially it sounded like things were going well, and can you kind of go into the deeper, more
The
difficult stuff?
stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we had some hope still after he was diagnosed with stage 3C rectal cancer, and they had noticed a node on his lung. So they followed that for about a year and a half, and we kept, hoping that would be just take out that spot when it was big enough, and away we would go. And unfortunately, after another move to a city where we were waiting to move into a new home, both starting new jobs, we found out that the cancer had metastasized to both lungs. And 2 days before we were expecting to just have a couple of spots taken out, we found out there was no hope for a cure, and he went through with the biopsy. Those few months after that were just a whirlwind of crisis on top of new jobs. Our daughter had a wedding reception. We moved into our new house. He had surgery. He had chemo. And then he had a blood clot from his jugular vein all the way through to his wrist from his PICC line. And then about 2 to 3 weeks after that, we found out, I've got it backwards. We found out that he had brain metastases. And then
Ouch.
then he had the blood clot from the PICC line. So that all happened in a matter of 7 to 8 weeks. And
Wow.
that was one of the hardest times, because I really thought that, I mean, life was really changing very, very fast. There hadn't been a lot of hope because of the brain metastases that we would see, even the 24 months that we were expecting from finding out that there was metastatic cancer in the lungs. And I just remember one day sitting in in our garage surrounded by moving boxes and looking for the battery pack for the drill so I could put a bed together so that the people who were staying with us could have a bed to sleep on. And the packers even packed little votive candles individually. And I just sat there and cried. Callum was in bed sick from a chemo treatment. And I just sat there and I broke down and cried, because I just couldn't believe that was going to be my life, that likely within months I was going to lose my husband. Thankfully, that didn't happen as quickly as we thought. But
Right.
that is when I started writing, and I wrote my blog, which was where I got the title for my book, Walking the Journey Together Alone, because I did feel that that's exactly what it was like for us. We were absolutely together in it, and the impact was separate. So that's when I started writing, because I needed an outlet to deal with what was coming up for us.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much life happening all at once, and a lot of it extremely difficult, no doubt about it. Can you talk about some of the darker moments? I know there was that point there where you just felt overwhelmed and you're crying in the garage, but from your personal perspective, where did you really struggle? What were the darker issues for you?
Likely, a lot of the darker issues were around the impending death, knowing that he was dying. And I think I'm very similar to a lot of people that it helped strengthen our relationship. We learned how to talk together in different ways. Sometimes we learned to fight differently because we had differing opinions. I really wanted him to quit work when they told us he had 6 months and we might make it till the next summer. And he was 40, we were both 47 years old, and I wanted a retirement. If that was going to be our retirement, I wanted to do it. And he didn't want to, which made sense because that gave him his own purpose. And thank goodness he didn't listen to me, because if he'd have stopped treatment, he would have died as soon as they had said, instead of living 2 years longer than anyone could have guessed. So that was the darkest part. And certainly once the treatment ended, that was a significant dark time. I think looking back, Rob, it's hard to pinpoint, and that's part of what I teach. It's like you get nibbled and nibbled and nibbled and nibbled, and I'm an action taker, and the more stress I get, the more action I take, and the more it helps. It's one of the strengths I have, but it's also something that wore me down quite a bit.
Yeah, expected, right? We're human and we have limits, and it goes on for a long time.
Yeah.
And you gave a lot of your heart for a long, long period of time. Talk about the dying process a little bit, because I don't want to shy away from that. You know, your perspective, his perspective, something around it.
Well, I'll weave this in with a couple of stories, because it was kind of an interesting thing that happened. And when he went through the whole brain radiation, he had 2 different types of radiation. He had some gamma knife, which I kind of went, if brain radiation and brain surgery was as easy as what it ended up to be, we should have done it a whole lot sooner. But I think it was the effects of the irradiation. That was the time where they told us that he had 6 to 12 months to live, and we really thought he was dying any moment. We had made a last-minute decision to go to Mexico and visit my sister, who was living there that winter. And he had a couple of episodes where he was sick, and we were out one night dining, and he had to run to the bathroom, and my brother-in-law's running to find a medication. And when we left Mexico, everybody felt like that was the last time that the 4 of us would ever be together. So it was very sorrowful, and that was November, and it just kind of carried on. And my daughter decided to, she and her husband made a huge sacrifice and decided to start their family early because they knew he wanted to be a granddad. So that Christmas, when we were thinking that, everybody's expecting this to be the last Christmas and we're all trying to be cheery, but everybody's got tears. No, it just with that doomsday feeling. And she gives him a gift of a photo frame with the stork saying, "I will arrive on June 23rd, 2009. And I really believe that turned things around for him, and he had even more will to live. And we just all hoped he would live to see our grandson be born, and he lived to see him on his 2nd birthday. So I think that was the introduction to thinking we were dealing with death. And then when it happened, and it was the last, he had maybe 3 or 4 months after treatment ended. And, just watching his health decline and the medications he was on, the painkillers, the cancer eventually metastasized to the end of his femur against the knee. So he had extreme nerve pain from the bones. And that was hard. And, cognitively he declined. And then knowing that I needed help, but not knowing how to do it. But we had a sense of, I want to say a sense of calm in some ways, where we took little pieces and we didn't deal with a lot of things at once. We did some of the funeral pre-planning. I told him that if he didn't choose some of the things for his service, that I was going to play Celine Dion's music, which I love, but he doesn't. So, that kind of pushed him to making some of his own decisions with that. Those are hard conversations to have, but it was very important for me that I followed his wishes. And I think that like one of the biggest moments that stands out was we'd had his parents had come to visit. We'd had lots of family. We knew that it was a matter of days, of maybe a week, if we were lucky, just with what was going on with him. Still, I didn't believe that, because every time he was supposed to die, he didn't. So I had a hard time believing that was it. I was that part was a bit of a shock, in a weird kind of way. But we were in an apartment, and we had a guest apartment for parents. We had so many people around, and I hardly spent time with him. And I broke down one night and just kind of said, like, I'm just afraid if you don't wake up tomorrow, I've not spent enough time with you. And that was the day he decided he would go onto the palliative care ward, theoretically for a day or two of respite. The nurses thought it was for me to stay at home and get rest, but he wanted me to stay with him, because then I would stay with him at the hospital and everyone else would stay in the other places. And I slept beside him for 5 nights in the hospital, and I never left. But that was that feeling of, oh my goodness, like, if you don't wake up, I still haven't had enough time. And I've mentioned this to other people, and they kind of relate that even though we knew for 3 years that he was dying, it happened fast. I don't know what other, like, people kind of outside our closest circle may think that sounds weird, but it still seemed to happen fast.
Like it's like a shock, really, because
Yeah.
it's not, in some sense, a new reality. Just have to honor you. I got tears in my eyes here with that
Yeah.
just lovely, lovely story of you asking. I wanted to spend more time with you, and then doing something practical that made it happen. Hats off to you for doing that.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful story. Thank you.